Hey, Dustin, let's talk about the idea of being a salespreneur. What does it mean to you?
Hey Brian, good to see you. Yeah, I think I have my own personal path with that, and then just kind of what I see from afar. But when I think of that true commission sales role for sales reps out there, that's what I think of as being a salespreneur. Because when you're off on that island, you don't have all that comfort with like a big salary and benefits and all that, and it's more commission focused. It's not for everybody, that's for sure, but that's truly like kind of running your own business. So that's what I think of when I hear salespreneur, is that commission sales role, whether that be in tech or medical device or whatever industry it may be.
And this is kind of something that I noticed early in my career because there were certain reps that, back when laptops were super expensive, you know, basically you got it from the company. And there was this one rep who bought his own. And I go, well, why'd you buy your own? It's a ton of money. And they upgrade every year. And he goes, well, I want to own the data. I want to own the machine. And if this doesn't work out, I just want to say goodbye. I don't want to have to back everything up, restore it somewhere else, hope I backed it up enough. And if I didn't, I'm hosed. This is pre-internet, right? So not everything was in the cloud. So it was basically physical. And I go, that probably is pretty smart. And as I go through the years, there'd be people who would lose their job and they'd be calling me up. I go, oh, do you know this headhunter? Can you get me his number? Oh, I lost the number of someone else. And isn't it in your phone? No, the company phone. So they were kind of, thrown onto an island after something changed. And it was all up to paper notebooks and they didn't invest in their own hardware. And today, does everybody have their own CRM? Do they have control over their SaaS accounts? You know, Granted, you don't want to buy a Salesforce license, but you can download the whole data. Once a month, I used to download the whole company contact list of companies just so I had it. And I don't know if I ever needed it or not, but I didn't want to be there and not have it.
Yep. No, you're 100% spot on. You have to kind of prepare in advance for that stuff. I'm looking around my place right now. I got like a spotlight, a microphone. I got all this stuff to help me with my sales meetings and whatnot, but that would be applicable no matter where I'm working. So you have to put in some effort there and save stuff. Like the USBs of all my important files, because a lot of stuff is like kind of mixed in between work, computer, and whatever. But like I always save stuff on a USB just so I have like I'm like kind of paranoid about it, like having a couple USBs that have all my important stuff from the last like decade. And if you're not doing that and you get caught off guard with something changing, it can be tough. And then that just kind of you're treating it like your own business, right? Like if you're
Yes.
running a business, you need to be looking at revenue, expenses, like all this stuff, investing in yourself to get better. Like that's kind of how I look at it as being a salespreneur. So all that stuff is very relatable to me.
And I think a lot of people get comfortable with the base salary and the benefits, and it's great. And I don't see it as covert. I see it as just forward thinking. You know, Covert would be, oh, you're doing it against the company's will or something. No, I think managers like it. Somebody who's a self starter, somebody who networks beyond just the transactional deals that they need to. They connect with other people in the industry. They do things above and beyond the job. I see too many people who come out of a big company after 5 years. All they know how to do is all the internals of the company. They haven't gotten new accounts. They don't know many people in the industry. None of their competitors know them. They don't know any headhunters. They don't know any other sales managers. And I always used to network with everybody else in the ecosystem. And I spent extra time with the managers because who's most likely going to hire me if something doesn't work out here? It's the
Yep.
other managers. And if they know me, we've gone to lunch, they know my style, they like you, they're already talking about hiring you. and they want somebody who's just plug and play in their territory. And I really like the idea because it gives you both value and autonomy as an employee, because you know what it's like to be on your own now.
Mm.
It's a little
Yep.
scary, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, you just said a lot of great things there, and it is a little scary. But I think all that stuff building up, like acting like a salespreneur, like I already felt like I was an entrepreneur for the last like 5 or 6 years, so it made it more natural to like go straight into an entrepreneur. And before I was in commission sales, I climbed the corporate ladder. So I worked for a great company called Milwaukee Tool, and I was there for 9 years, and I had 7 different roles, and I was just like climbing the ladder, like trying to get to director, VP, all these like higher level sales roles, which was great experience. I mean, I wouldn't change that because I got a lot of opportunities that most people wouldn't have, like dealing with big time revenue and what have you, and learning how a company works at a high level. But then I realized like, okay, I'm doing all this stuff. I was acting like a salespreneur, but I was in a more of a high base bonus job, company vehicle, like expense account, like very comfortable, like good life. Right. But then I was like looking like, hey, do I want to keep climbing this ladder, and I'm really probably going to be doing the same thing, just more stress, like more conference calls, like more all this, or I could take a gamble and go bet on myself. So I think the salespreneur thing is more like betting on yourself. Like if you're really good at sales and you think you can make some things happen, like why would you not want to be in a commission job? And I was kind of drinking the Kool-Aid of climbing the corporate ladder for a long time, and I learned a ton, right? But I was like, if I'm really good at sales, I want to bet on myself and I want to go down this entrepreneur path later anyway. Why would I not go to a commission job and like kind of take that risk? You have to be willing to take some risk as an entrepreneur or a salespreneur and do some of those tough things and be willing to change, I guess, too. So
Right. And if you are a commission salesperson, even with a great base, uh, do they really treat you like the other employees?
mhm.
I remember going from being like the pre-sales engineer into the sales rep role, and it went from me and the VP going out to dinner every time he was in town and just yucking it up to we'd still go to dinner, but he'd grill me about every deal. It was like, tell me why I should still keep you. That was the tone. He didn't say it, but so how's that deal coming? You think you're going to get it? Is it this quarter? It was just the different tone was so remarkable. I was like, did I do something wrong? It's just that companies view salespeople very different. And I don't know, it's just because they pay commission or they don't value it. And it's been pretty consistent I've been to 12 companies. So it's been very consistent. Oh, that they put you up on stage when you get a big order.
Yeah.
But that lasts about a day and a half. And then you get the new comp plan, the quota's really high, commission's really low. And the other two people next to you, they're taking the other half of your territory. And
Yeah. But
if you have the employee mindset, you go along with it and everything. But if you have the salespreneur mindset where the company needs you more than you need the company, that's where you want to be.
yeah, and you're 100% right. I've been at 3 companies, so not as many, but every single one of them is just you're getting grilled, especially if you're like a high performer and you're doing well. I mean, they want to know like everything going on and that all these deals, and then when things are not going as well, even more. So it's like you're always have to be on, even at those dinners and those events. So you're not like getting a break. Like, I mean, some of it can be a little bit of a boondoggle, I'm sure sometimes, but you're always on talking about that stuff. So that's for sure.
And when you're doing the extra stuff with the salespreneur mindset, going to events, maybe speaking or helping arrange them, and working with clients above and beyond the transaction, people notice that. And all of a sudden when the customer says, we bought because of this rep, not because of the product, not because of the price, not because of the company, that's when the company really needs you. And it's not service so much as just really digging in and solving problems and helping out. and thinking about what the client really needs. I think too many people look at today, and they're almost conditioned to it. Come in and hit the cadence button 1,000 times and then go home. And
Yeah. It
that
just
that's not the salespreneur. That's an employee mindset.
100%. Yeah. I mean, I was just thinking of like some of the customers I've had in the past. I think the ultimate compliment as a salespreneur or sales rep is when a customer wants you to work for them, right? So like I've had many times where that's happened. I know a lot of good friends that have had that where the customer wants you to work for them or they end up working for that account. So that's I think like the ultimate compliment. And yeah, you have to make it about them. I know many times where I struggled with my internal company was trying to be profitable and all this stuff. And I was trying to make it more about the customer. And it's like, I can't shove all this stuff down their throat because this is what's really happening. Here's their problems. And I'm trying to like always navigate that. And that's why I think I kind of went down the path I was, because when you work for those bigger companies, sometimes making it about the customer can get kind of lost sometimes because they have such a big brand and they have so much momentum. They don't have to do that as much. And I would struggle with that. And I would get some of the negative feedback was like, hey, you're too worried about the customer versus making us as much money. And I know there's a balance there and you have to do it, but I found that the bigger companies like make it more about their company and their brand versus the customer.
Yeah, work within our system. And
Yep.
and that's another thing that we have to do is we have to figure out how to get that system to work for the customer instead of just telling the customer, that's how it works. But that's really, we're between the rock and the hard place all the time. And if you don't have the mindset of, I'm going to do whatever it takes to make it work, you'll just, well, you blame people, you point the finger. And the company may like that, but the customer doesn't like it. The customer wants the problem solved. They don't want any headaches. And that's why you're there. They want you to expedite it and be their advocate within the company. And the best kickoff meeting I ever had was we went around and videotaped our customers, 5 top customers, about why they bought the product. And then we put it together in a video. And we presented that as the beginning of our presentation at the QBR. And the 2 founders stood up and clapped. It was like, and my direct manager was okay with me. I had a new VP above him and he didn't like me because I ended up putting a deal in his territory of no fault of my own. It was just the company had a division. It ended up going into his territory, knew nothing about it. He got a split on it, but he thought I did something underhanded. It was nothing underhanded. But he was like, oh, I got to deal with this guy now. But it was when you do that and you're selling internally at the company as well, because the company you work for is also your customer. And they've got to be happy. Your manager's got to be happy all the way up. And you can't, be breaking eggs all the time. Or you got to be cleaning up afterwards if you do.
Yeah. No, it really is a rock and a hard place, like you were saying earlier. And I mean, you get put in some very tough positions. I guess that's why sales folks in some industries and areas can make the type of money that they can, because it is a high pressure. It's not for everybody. It's not as glamorous as what people think. But yeah, going back to what you're talking about is like, I think just really being part of the team with the customer, like being one of them, being a peer versus like a sales rep shoving stuff down their throat. And I try to immerse myself in whatever industry I'm doing, like going to networking events and things of that nature, like whatever they're interested in, I'm interested in. I'm trying to like be at those things and seeing, and it takes time too. Like if this goes back to going above and beyond, if you really are treating it like a salespreneur, you should be doing stuff like that. And it shouldn't be someone telling you to do that. That should be what you want to do, because it's going to, especially for long term, right? If you're not in it for the long term, then it's like, what's the point? Because a lot of that stuff is going to build up and just have a ripple effect over months and years. So
yeah. And get on to the internet, and you don't have to become, everyone talks about personal brand and stuff, but it's really being the expert in this particular area. So you become known as somebody who's passionate about this particular problem. I sold a lot of security stuff. So I started a LinkedIn group about chief information security officers for web services. And, and everyone says, "Are you looking for a job?" I go, "No, I'm looking for customers." Because at the time, everyone used LinkedIn to find a job. And he goes, "How are you going to find customers there? I got 5,000 CISOs who want to join my group. How many do you have?" "Well, I know 3, right?" And all of a sudden, I was generating a lot of business and leads for other people at the company, doing it 15 minutes a day. And everyone's like, "Is that taken away from your job? Or are you trying to start your own company?" And, I had a vision for that, but not at that time. Everyone kind of became a little suspicious, but I think that doesn't happen so much today, but I think it's something that you need to do to build up that equity in the marketplace. And if your company doesn't appreciate it, maybe it's not the right company, or maybe you need to convince them that it works, because it's basically an online trade show. What's the difference? I think we learned that in the last couple years. It's like, "Oh, we can't meet people. I guess we have to meet them online." And it's like, yeah, it's been around for 15 years. It's called the internet.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's a great point too. I mean, I'm a big fan of like the personal branding stuff, and I take it to a probably different gear than most. But LinkedIn, for example, I've really focused on the last like probably 14, 16 months. And I would tell you that probably half of my conversations and leads come from just LinkedIn. But that's been a lot of work and effort. It does take some time, and you have to get some momentum. But like that's because you're building up conversations. I'm not like selling stuff on LinkedIn. I'm just talking about
Right.
problems, topics, etc. And over time, you just build up this momentum. And then, I can't tell you how many times like I meet people in person at these events, and because I've been doing the LinkedIn stuff, we already know each other basically. They're like, "Oh yeah, I saw you just changed jobs recently. Like, how's that going?" Like, and then just immediately you have this rapport with people that you haven't even like met in person yet. So like LinkedIn's great. I like to mix in person stuff now since we're back, but like you have to be doing that if you're a salespreneur. Like if you're not doing that, then I guess you found a great job and role if you're doing well. But like I don't see how you can get ahead and be different and really make things happen these days without doing stuff like that in sales.
Yeah. I mean, it's the easiest way, and you don't have to be a content creator. I think you can just participate. And what I used to do is I used to find like the top 3 influencers at that time, bloggers, and I would promote their stuff. So they liked me. The people that saw it liked me because I was sharing it. You get to hear other security professionals' viewpoints on it, and you could engage in a conversation about that. Instead of starting at my product, I'm starting at what they care about. And I used to cover a lot of, government intelligence agencies, and they're not visible on the internet as who they really are. They're visible as through contractors, and they mask who they are. So it's hard to know who to get in touch with at these 3-letter agencies. So you kind of got to network your way around, and you just can't knock on the front door and, yeah, who covers internet security here? Like, "Sir, will you mind leaving?" You just can't
Yeah.
do that. You can't do the drop bys. You can't do the cold calls.
Yeah. It doesn't. Yeah. I mean, that's a whole nother probably conversation for us, but the cold calls or going in person all over the state, depending on how big your territory is. I mean, it's just you can have a balance of that, right? There's probably some that can happen depending on the industry or what you're doing, but you have to be doing the other stuff. And if you're not trying to be different, think outside the box, like what you said is great. You just find that influencer on LinkedIn or whatever, and just like and comment on their stuff or share it. Like that gets you visibility in itself. And that's much simpler than trying to create your own content, like what you were talking about. But Yeah, I think you just need to have a balance. You got to treat it like your own business and like really think in depth about this stuff, but not everybody's probably doing that.
Not enough. And if you get comfortable as an employee, how does it really grow? And what happens when there's a hiccup? It's even outside of your control. It's not even the economy. Let's say the company gets acquired.
Hmm.
And you're a startup. I was a startup guy, and our little 100-person company got bought by IBM. And my equity still wasn't vested. My manager basically made my OTE my base, so I wouldn't leave. Can't leave with multiple six-figure base. You got a company credit card, but now I have to deal with 300,000 people. And I remember that their homepage had 300 different links on it. So you'd be like, how do I get a business card? Oh, it's on the homepage. They put everything on. You got to look through everything. It was the opposite of everything I liked. But you had to learn to get along and fit in. But at the same time, you have to build up your ecosystem so that the next thing that comes along at the right time for you, you can jump and have it be a jump up, not a jump to the side or a jump down. Because the best career advice I ever got was your career is either spiraling up or down. It doesn't stay still. And most people it's spiraling down. And the problem with that is there's inertia there. There's momentum. Because you can't just stop. You have to slow the momentum down to rebuild. And that takes a lot of time. So, you got to be the shark. The shark never stops swimming.
You're right. And I think that goes to the whole comfortable thing, right? So if you got that high base bonus, all these perks, it's hard to walk away from, and especially depending on what type of situation you're in, with family, kids, like it can be tough to walk away from that. So and right now with the economy, everyone's saying it's whatever's going to happen the next year. It's like maybe it is a time to be a little safer compared to other times, right? But at the same time, I know people are always like talking crap a little bit about millennials and whatnot, how much they change jobs, but I think it's because millennials are more open to be uncomfortable and change and try new things, maybe compared to other times. Cause I think that salespreneur, that person's confident like that shark, they're willing to hop around a little bit to progress their career and willing to take some chances. It might not always work out perfect, but if you have that background and that mentality, you'll be fine. Even if something bad happens to you, you're going to bounce back pretty quickly.
Yeah. And what I've also noticed is that people with the employee mindset, they're too dependent on the product, too dependent on the company and all the infrastructure. And if you take them away from that, they don't know what to do. Because every time I was at a startup, they'd always hire these people from the big brand names. And because they thought that they created the brand. It's like, no, they participated in it. Because every nut and bolt on the rocket still gets to the moon, right? It doesn't mean that that nut and bolt created the rocket. It's just they're a part of it. And they always failed at the startup because they're like, well, I'm used to having, a pre-sales person dedicated to me. Where are my accounts? They did mostly upselling instead of, breaking new ground in greenfields. So they didn't know how to prospect without a brand name. Because if you have a big brand name, you can probably get a meeting. But how do you get that meeting when you don't have the brand name?
No, it's a great point. I worked for two big companies. The first part of my significant part of my career, Milwaukee Tool and Stryker, and 100%. I mean, one of the differentiators and one of the things I could always lay my head on was that equity, that brand that's been built up over decades. Like, hey, Milwaukee Stryker, it's like everyone knew it, like great. But then when you go to a startup, it's like most likely people haven't heard of that. So you're relying more on your own brand. But if you're not doing all the stuff that we just talked about, I mean, you're going to be in a tough spot. And then to try to get somebody to start prospecting and doing all this stuff that hasn't been doing it for a decade plus, I mean, to your point, probably a high percent are going to fail right away.
They do. And I'm trying to think if any of them really cooked. And I can't think of any of them.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. And but I guess they're willing to take that change. They probably went right back to the big companies, I'm sure.
They do, because they see, because typically the money is at the startups, certainly from the equity standpoint. But everything's a green field, so you get a huge territory, and if you can prospect, you do really well. Because let's say you have all of California or something, where the big brand, you had a zip code or 10 accounts.
Hmm.
And if you have the good accounts, you can upsell and maybe you'll make it. But at a startup, you have all this green field. But if you don't have a brand where people already know you, where you can just immediately get an introduction or a meeting, you don't have your ecosystem, you don't know what else they're buying, you don't know who else has already sold into there, who else already knows the lay of the land, you have to start from scratch. And that's a good 6-9 months if you really
Hmm.
pound it. And if then you come in with the ego of like, well, I was number 2 at, muckitymuck.com. But now why isn't it working the same way? Where are all my leads? And this is what people don't realize today. Who gets leads? Nobody tells me they get leads anymore, unless you're at a big company in the tornado. Because B2B marketing is, more than broken, right?
Yeah.
What do they do? Webinars and ads? You know, it takes them all this time, and they don't even know the customer or the problem. So they just do ads or do webinars and give away an Apple Watch. So you get a bunch of people who want the Apple Watch and could care less about your product.
Yeah, you're 100% spot on. And I in my situation I'm in right now, I'm going the entrepreneur route. But a lot of my opportunities have been from my own brand that I built up, where it didn't really matter where I was at. They liked Dustin and they trusted me. But then I had people that hit me up. They're like, "Why aren't you going back to XYZ company?" And I'm like, I know I can do that if I want to. But like that's not where I want to go. But I could always go back to a big brand and do that and make comfortable living, which would be that's great for a lot of people. But it's like the fact that I've already built up my brands at these different companies and they trust me is just kind of helped me kind of hit the ground running in the entrepreneur world too.
Oh. And I think my final point is you are a salespreneur, whether you admit it or not. And
Hmm.
you better start admitting it and acting like it instead of being the victim of it. Because if you act like an employee, you're probably not going to end up very well.
Yeah, you don't want to be that person blaming everybody else, being the negative person, always complaining. That salespreneur, I agree 100%. Like anybody in that sales world should be a salespreneur and think of themselves like that, or hopefully change moving forward after they listen to this.